with failure, because we're ingrained in that coming from childhood, most of us have some level of strive for perfection in some capacity. And so failure feels scary. But in the world of entrepreneurism and business ownership in general, failure is 100% a learning point. If you do not fail, you cannot learn. The bigger the failure, the more successful you will be on the other side.
Welcome to The Ownership Game with Gary Montalvo. What would it take to get into the driver's seat of your life and leave your mark? The Ownership Game starts now.
Today's a fun episode for me because I get to geek out a bit. My guest today is Kasey D'Amato. Kasey is a business strategist, executive life coach, and a seasoned entrepreneur. Much like myself, her work is rooted in all the fun stuff that happens between the intersection of leadership and business. So we got to do quite a bit of shop talking. The conversation was full of great nuggets on how to bring leadership to your growing business when you are the leader, but most importantly, when you're also the follower. Hey Kasey, welcome to the show.
Hi, Gary. How are you?
I'm good. It's always fun having other leadership coaches on the show because we get to kind of like riff and compare and like talk shop, if you will, and geek out a little bit. So I'm excited that you're here and, break down. I thought it'd be good to talk about some of the challenges that entrepreneurs have around leadership and what are some of the tools that we can give them to empower them. Because I feel like entrepreneurs often don't look at themselves as leaders. You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh, it's just me. And maybe they have like a VA or they have their team members, but they're just like they kind of think of themselves as like an island.
Yeah.
And so they tend to approach it more from like, what are the strategies that I need and what's the new tool? What's the new software? What's the new AI that's gonna have me have that breakthrough? And I'm like, yeah. But before we get there, what's all this over here?
Yes.
What's all this over here that we got to deal with?
Yes. So true. So true.
So it's gonna be fun. So I was reading in some of your materials this idea of holistic leadership
Yeah.
that you speak about. Let's start there. What is that for you?
Yeah. So what I've really studied in my patterns of serial entrepreneur, I'm sure like those of us that are entrepreneurs, we have our journey where we've grown multiple businesses. So I've grown 5 businesses, 3 of my own, and 2 I've been an entrepreneur. I've grown for somebody else. And in doing that, I've studied what has made some of those business quite successful. What by that I mean like multi 7-figure or more, and some that were not successful. And I believe it comes down to that holistic leadership, which is comprising of 4 pillars. One is business acumen. Do you understand business and cash flow? Or, are you not putting your head in the sand about the numbers and the KPIs? You're getting confidence that in your business skill set. That's the first pillar. The second one is self-leadership. How much are you balancing your ability to drive that grit, that determination, that going for the gold with your self-preservation, with self-care and balance and taking time to put the oxygen mask on yourself? So how are you balancing that self-leadership where you're thinking bigger and you're not holding yourself back, but at the same time you're protecting your energy, right? The third pillar is team leadership. Are you building a team? I always say an entrepreneur that is a solopreneur forever has the worst boss in the world, and that's yourself, because you're overwhelmed, you're exhausted, and you're on a one-way path to burnout. So if your number one goal is not to build a team, then really rethink the reason that you're in business. And if it's freedom and a lot of the reasons why people go into business, if your mindset is not that your number one goal is to build your business so that you can hire that next team member, if that's not your number one goal, if your goal is AI or something like that, you're missing the boat. You're missing the boat. And the fourth pillar is industry leadership. How are you disrupting your industry? How are you getting known? It doesn't mean you have to be famous by any means, but how are you breaking through to be the best, to be different, to be unique, and to be a disruptor in your space? So you're not just one of many. You are known for you. And those are the four pillars of leadership, of holistic leadership, in my opinion, of what makes a successful business versus a business that is not successful.
So much to unpack there. I love that. The first thing that I'm present to is, in my experience, most entrepreneurs start a business because there is a skill they have, or
Yes.
a passion they have, or a talent.
Yes.
And then they're like, okay, I'm gonna go make money doing this thing. And
Yes.
then they get in business and they realize that that skill, talent, thing that they do is like 10-15% of the actual game, right? They have to really learn the other stuff. They have to confront the other stuff. They have the and it's confronting for many of them, learning how to market yourself can be confronting. Learning how to sell and exchange money for what the value that you provide can be really confronting for many of them. Dealing with money stuff and financing and organizing your money, it for many is the first time that they've
Yes.
had to learn how to do that, so that passion aspect of it, it's really a small slice of the pie. And what you're really pointing to is like leadership is the part that brings all of that forward, right?
Yeah.
That the whole other 80%, 85% that you avoid, that you don't want to do, that is not
Right.
fun.
Right.
It's really, leadership is a thing that brings that allows you to bring yourself to that, to do the work that needs to be done.
Exactly. Exactly. To your point, you can look at holistic leadership also, you balancing your, to your point, personal finances and things like that. Another common mistake that entrepreneurs make, but it's not the skill, especially entrepreneurs when they start with the skill. Maybe they started freelancing or they started and all of a sudden it turned into this micro business. And then sometimes it gets stuck at that stage because in order to grow your business, you need three personality types. And that is the visionary, the person that is thinking bigger. That is a manager leader, somebody who's doing sort of the operations and logistics and coordination and all of those systems, right? All of that. And then the artist or the implementer or the person who's delivering. And when we start out, we oftentimes are that person. We're the person delivering the service or doing the skill. But the reality is, in order to grow the business, that is just one piece of it. And if we're going to stay in that spot, then we need to surround ourselves with people with the other skills. But in most businesses, the name of the game is to teach others to do the skill, build your team, and start to step into the visionary role. If you want to really get to seven, multi seven, eight, and higher figure businesses, that's the way to start thinking is how do I teach other people to do this so that I can spend my time building collaborative relationships, partnerships, more exposure, speaking, and getting out there more so that my business starts to grow. There's more clients, there's more community, there's more people coming, and I have a team of people that can deliver this service and somebody who can help manage and organize it.
Yeah.
That's when you hit it out of the park and your business really can blow up.
Yeah, and what you're also pointing to is there needs to be an expansion
Yes.
of your vision, and
Yes.
an expansion, and that vision needs to include an expansion of how you see yourself,
Yes.
and an expansion of what you see as possible. Because again, if you're just, if you're talking about the micro business, which is such a typical way of how people
Yep.
start, right? Like they, again, I love making candles. I start sharing it with my friends, and all of a sudden I start, oh, this is
There's a
cute.
business.
Okay, cool. And then there's a little business here, right?
Yes.
But if you don't do this work that you're pointing to, of reinventing how you're looking at the future of yourself and this business, you do get stuck in this pattern
Yes.
of surviving the business, right? Like,
Yes.
just like, you make the candles, oh my God, I gotta sell these candles. You make the
Yes.
candles, like, oh my God, you gotta sell these candles. But you
Yes.
can only make 50 candles at a time, so it means you can
Right.
only sell 50 candles at a time, which takes you a certain amount of time. So how do
Yes.
you now scale the business when the math isn't there, which is very
Totally.
often what happens? And
Yep.
then throw in that now every business requires you to be, a content creator and a
Yes.
social media and a
Yeah.
production master and making.
Yeah.
So it's like that in itself is a full-time job within the full-time job.
Totally,
So
totally,
so
totally.
yeah.
Yes,
So this idea of like I often tell my clients it's like no, don't build a business that you don't prepare for the business that you have now. Let's prepare for the
yes,
business that we're growing into.
1000%,
Like let's
thousand.
build the org chart for what the business is going to look like 3 or 4 years from now, and then
Yes,
we'll fill the spots in. We'll work towards. I'm not saying let's go hire
yes,
five, six, 7 people now, but
yes.
if you don't do that work and start building towards, you get stuck in this pattern of just trying to put out the fires.
100%, 100%. And you're exactly, I agree with you 1000%. Like people, even in the early stages, start to build the org chart. They don't think they're just making the candles, right? They're just doing the
Yeah,
thing. And so they're not even thinking that way, like an org chart. That's not on their radar. But just to plant the seed, even if you're not hiring the people yet, just plant the seed. Everything you're doing right now is to how quickly can we fill just one of those seats. That it's not how quickly can we make another candle or how quickly can we, ship these out. The name of the game is how quickly can we fill one of these spots. And so I agree with you 1000%. The vision is so critical, that the vision for next year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years has to be laser clear. And you might change it. Like it can
yeah,
have sort of a a very strange pattern, but you want to be shooting for that North Star so that you're always thinking bigger. You're always thinking bigger than today. And one of the tactical tools that I like to use is, time blocking. Of course, hopefully everybody is time blocking. I That's a skill that I used, when I hit a very hard dark burnout time in one of my businesses. Was it It's all about the time blocking, but it's a tool that I like to use for myself. I hold myself accountable to this. Is every 90 days I try and change 20% of my schedule. So I try and remove 20% of the things on my calendar that probably aren't necessarily important. Either I can hire somebody else to do them, or they're just not really moving the needle, or they're not efficient. So I try to take 20% of my calendar every 90 days and completely change it. Take the things off, or re-optimize them, or hire somebody to do it, or cancel them altogether from my world, and then replace 20% of my activities and action with something that is going to drive things faster. So whether that is sales or marketing initiative, or whether that is investing time in my team, or whether that is, whatever it might be. But every 90 days, there's a new campaign that I'm going to focus energy on, and I'm going to take things off rather than layering all the things on. And then we get burned out and overwhelmed, especially in the early stages. But instead of layering on, I make an intentional look at my calendar. Okay, 20% needs to go. What is it going to be? It's not going to be
yeah,
my clients. Like, I'm passionate about them. So what is it going to be? Or is it streamlining the social content? What is the thing that I could make more efficient, or I'm going to remove so that I can make room for the 20% of time that's going to go into the next initiative, so that in 1 year from now, I've made 4 specific intentional moves that I know for sure will guarantee I will be in a different place a year from now than today.
yeah. And that work that you're talking about requires faith, and it
Yes.
requires the freedom to be able to pull your head up and
Yes.
actually look
Yes.
and go what needs to go, which is why going back to the previous conversation is so important that you do start thinking about teams and systems very early on, because if you can't lift your head up to look and do this type of thinking pretty regularly in your business, then you're always going to be stuck in the carrying
Yep.
in the making of the candles, right? In the
Yep.
implementation of the candles.
Yep.
I think one of the reasons that entrepreneurs are really, I think this is stuff that people know.
Yep.
I think, if you'd ask most entrepreneurs, most people, they know this stuff, but they
Yes.
have a really hard time doing it. My guess on that, based on my experience, is the main reason is they're they get overwhelmed. I think there's a group of us that just get overwhelmed with planning, and to that I say planning is a skill set that you learn just like anything else. Like
Yep.
if you practice it enough time, it'll come, but you have to have the wherewithal to stick it out and learn the process. That's all I'm gonna say about that for now. If you want to say something else, but I think the main reason is people are afraid to plan and create goals because they don't want to deal with the disappointment
Yeah.
of not hitting it,
Yeah.
of not failing, or quote unquote failure. It occurs for them as failure if they don't hit it.
Right.
and that's what they're trying to avoid. Is that, would you say that that's like true for you as well?
1,000%. 1,000%. It's either fear of failure or fear of success. It's one of the two. Those are the two things that hold all of us back. We're either afraid we're going to try something and we're going to look silly, it's going to flop, it's not going to work, we're not going to be successful, or we're afraid if it is successful, how am I going to do it? How am I going to handle the influx of activity? How am I going to make the more candles? How am I going to how could I possibly do it? So I'm afraid of the success. So it's one of the two things, and people are with failure, because we're ingrained in that coming from childhood. Most of us have some level of strive for perfection in some capacity. And so failure feels scary. But in the world of entrepreneurism and business ownership in general, failure is 100% a learning point. If you do not fail, you cannot learn. The bigger the failure, the more successful you will be on the other side. Hands down. I've seen it time and time again. The bigger the failure, the more successful you'll be. So if you don't fail at all, if you don't test and fail, then you can't learn and you can't grow. So, thinking about everything as a beta test, everything in these 90-day blocks, I'm going to test this for 90 days. I'm going to learn from the failures. I'm either going to fix it and do it again better, or I'm going to decide this isn't aligned with me. It's not, part of my core mission or passion, and I'm going to replace it with something else. Either way, it's a win. Either way, it's a win. So, failure in the business ownership or entrepreneurship has to be replaced with failure is a privilege. I always say business is a blessing and failure is a privilege, and fear is a choice. It's in our mind. We can choose to not be afraid. We can choose to embrace this as a beta test and accept, I'm going to learn from this. If it's either going to be super successful, I'm going to learn. Either way, it's a win. And that's the mindset that I'm sure you're sharing with your community as a leadership coach. Like, if you don't have somebody supporting you from a coach standpoint, even a VA holding you accountable, just give a VA an assignment. Like, every day they remind you, failure is your privilege. We're not going to be afraid. We're going to do it. Like, have somebody in your ecosystem that's holding you accountable. Because if you're alone, it's really hard to
It's
lift
so
yourself up to
hard.
that level. Yeah.
It's so hard. And
Yeah.
and you can't, like, when you're in the matrix, you don't know you're in the matrix type of thing,
Yes.
right? So when
Yes.
you're in the stories and the narratives and all that
Yeah.
stuff, I mean, this happens even to the best of us. Like, there are
100%.
times where I will need my partner or my colleagues, to kind of go, "Hey, what are you doing here? Come on. No,
Yes.
no, no, no,
Yes.
no." Because even
Yeah.
when you're very practiced at this, you're still human. But
Yes.
I think, I always get a little nervous with these conversations because I don't ever want to give people the impression that, like, whenever I hear people like, "Oh, just stop being afraid, do it anyway," I'm always like, yeah, but that's not that easy for people sometimes, right? So it's like, I never want to create the experience for people that it's just like they're being silly, or but what I will say is, you do, like, there's nothing wrong with fear. That's
Yeah.
where people get stuck up. They
Yes.
start
Yeah.
judging their fear, they start being ashamed of their fear, they start, you know there's nothing wrong with your fear.
Yeah.
Now, you have the ability to do it anyway.
Yes.
So I never ask people to stop being afraid, but I
Yeah.
do ask them to take a step in that
Yeah.
fear. It's
That's right.
courage,
That's
take, it could be scary. Who can
Yep.
hold your hand?
That's right.
How can you create support, like as
That's right.
Kasey's saying, with a coach or with a community that's going to really empower you? What doesn't work is you just staring at the face of it and going, "Okay, I'm not going to move. I'm just going to
Right.
sit here
Right.
and stare at it and hope that it goes away."
Yep.
Never works. It
Never.
only amplifies.
Yes.
It
Yes.
only amplifies. The more
So
you
true.
wait, I always use the analogy of, like, when you're waiting to jump into a cold pool,
Yes.
or like cold, what, the beach, and it's cold, and you're just like, and
Yeah.
the more you wait, the colder it gets and the
Yes,
harder it
exactly.
gets, and but if you just jump in, it's
Yes.
over, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the best analogy I can give you.
Yep.
But there is a way for you. Now, I will also say, the more you do this, the more muscle you have around it. It's a
Totally.
practice. It's
Yes.
absolutely a practice.
Yes.
But it is really key that if you're listening, you develop the practice of stepping into the fear and stepping into the failure. I always say fail fast.
Yep.
fail
Exactly.
fast. If the more you fail, the because so much. It's funny. So much of what you need to know comes from the failure. So
Yeah,
much of what you
yes.
need to learn
All of
comes
it.
from the failure, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there's so many stories from like businesses who fail. I mean, oh, Post-it. Wasn't Post-it
Yes.
like a failure? Like like they
Oh,
were trying
so
to make it
many.
adhesive for
Yes.
like Scotch tape or something and it didn't work.
Right.
But then Post-it happens. You're
Right.
like, you know,
Right. And look what it is now. It's like the number one product for 3M or something. Yes, I know. So much comes from the failure. I mean, there time and time again, there's so many, sports analogies with athletes or Olympians, like so many failures of people along their journey. If you look at athletes and you look at coaches, anywhere, anybody in that space, almost 100% of them, of the top performers, have some failure story. And that, the name of the game is you get up and you train a little differently. Maybe you work with a different trainer, maybe you work on a different muscle group, maybe you, right, but the name of the game is get up, keep going, and continue to move forward, and then that's how you win the game. And to your point, it's about the who's. There's a tool that I use about the three level of who's, because it's not just one person necessarily. It's surrounding yourself with three levels of who's. And if you do that, you're insulated from the fear and you're insulated from failure. Not that it won't happen, but you will get picked up so fast. And the three level of who's is always have two or three coaches you're working with. I do personally always have a couple of different coaches that have different skill sets. Somebody maybe that's overarching life, and somebody else with a couple other specific business skill sets. People that have done things, they're further ahead than me, that are guiding. That's the first level of who's. The second is your peers, your collaborators, your networking groups, people that are at similar stages of business, like be in it together. And your third level of who's is your team, even if it's just a part-time VA, if you're just starting out. That counts. That counts. And at each level, if you have yourself loaded up with your three level of who's, then the failure becomes not a big deal, because you're like, oh wow, everyone's gone through this. The people ahead of me have been through this at 10 million times. They can help me. The people that are my peers, we're going through it together. We're getting resourceful together, and my team can hold me accountable. And if you don't stay in a vacuum, just say, you're like you were just saying, if you're sitting there doing it alone, it's going to feel impossible. It's going to feel overwhelming. You're going to feel stuck over and over again. If you surround yourself with the right three levels of who's, you're going to be able to continue to move forward. And those times that you have the micro failures, you'll pick yourself up so much faster. Your community will pick you up, and you'll be back off to the races and doing it bigger and better.
yeah. I remember there was a many years ago I was going to Spain to someone hired me to help open a coaching center in Spain and to train the teams and set up their
Yes.
processes and all that. So,
Yeah.
and I had not done anything at that scale before, right?
Okay. Okay.
And so it was like the first time. And my biggest concern was number one, I was going to Spain. My Spanish is good, but it's not like I'm not used to training and coaching in Spanish.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's a cultural difference, right? Like do I, so it was a big decision, and I remember I called one of my mentors. I was like, okay, am I crazy for saying yes to this? Like, am I, should I do this thing? And they were like, look, you're gonna go, you're gonna fall, and you're gonna hit the floor,
Right.
and you're gonna mess up.
Yeah.
And when you do, I'll be right here to dust you
Right.
off and pick you up.
Exactly.
And that was such a it was so much freedom in that conversation because I was like, oh, right, I am gonna go there and mess some things up because
Right.
how
Because you
could
don't
I
know
not? I mean,
how,
it's a
how,
whole new thing. How could I
right.
not? How could I not make mistakes? And that they're like, look, you're gonna go and you're probably gonna mess some things up, and I'll be
Yeah.
here to help you pick
Yeah.
yourself back together. And that was such a it was it just gave me so much freedom. It gave me
Totally.
freedom to go and know that number one, they're telling me to go. Number two, I know I'm gonna make a mistake. And number three, I have support and I have people that I can call the moment that I do. So
Yep.
I love that. I love the three. What did you call it? The three
The three
level of
who's,
who's?
the three
Three
who, three
who's.
level of who's. Yes.
Um, so you've been talking a lot, about team leadership, and it's one of your pillars. You brought it up in your who's as one of the who's. So I I want to talk about that because I do think that for a lot of entrepreneurs, they it's a challenge to make that transition between when do I bring in people? How do I bring in people? I think it's number one, there's like the financial investment when you're like, when your funds are limited, you're like, well, I need this money. How am I going to spend it on somebody else? Number two, I think it's really difficult for them to know how to manage other people when they're trying to manage themselves.
Yep.
Um, and this idea of and just not really knowing how to duplicate their expertise and their knowledge on with themselves. So I think it'd be interesting, to spend some time talking about that and what advice do you have for entrepreneurs that are kind of stuck in between making that transition and why they should and what advice you have for them to do that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a big believer that teamwork makes the dream work. So to be successful, mindset is about building the team. So the first person in pretty much almost any business is this VA. So if you've got a small, you're starting up, you're a solopreneur, your part-time VA, if you're getting somebody for $20 an hour, and you should start with 2 hours a week, so that you don't feel like it's a huge investment financially and it's not going to be scary, but start with somebody who can help organize the administrative tasks, because what you're not realizing most likely is how much time you are looking at you're organizing your calendar, you're answering your inbox, you're coordinating things with clients or things like that. So somebody that can take these administrative tasks off of your plate and create a micro system for this VA. Hopefully the VA is good at making systems and they can do it for you. That's the
Well,
perfect.
if they're not, don't hire that VA.
Exactly, exactly. They should be doing that. So then you start adding on a little more hours, a little more hours, a little more hours. Get this person up to really like part-time. So it's really important to hire at the beginning somebody that wants to grow, somebody that has room to grow with you, so that fairly quickly, within a few months, you have them up to, minimum 20 hours a week, so that you're getting real power, real benefit. And then you replace that time with revenue generating activities on your calendar. So this might mean another client. This might mean a little bit more activity on the marketing or sales side, so that 100% that this time and energy going to the VA now is being replaced with revenue generating activities. And you continue to do that until you're growing, so that the cash flow is not such a problem. And then your next hire is going to be somebody who's going to implement with your clients. They're going to be more on the service side of what you do, the tactical side. They're going to take a piece of how you deliver what you do and how you do it, either off your plate. So they're going to start lightening the load for you in that capacity. And those are going to be like your first two team members that you're going to bring on. And they can be freelance to start. They do not need to be W-2 employees at the beginning. The most important thing is you just start training yourself to get comfortable working with the team, and then you'll start to recognize, okay, every 6 months I'm feeling like there's not enough minute, like I don't have enough manpower, there's not enough minutes. And then every new hire should be impacting the bottom line. That first VA frees up your time so that you can do a little bit more client work, more money coming in. That next hire is somebody that's coming on the implementation team, so you can absorb more clients, more money coming in. So every single hire directly increases the bottom line. So there's never a fear of, I can't afford to hire people, it's going to cost me money. No, hiring people should be making you money. That's the way to
Yeah,
think about
and
it. Yeah.
that's the key. Like I always say, okay, if I can get you, an extra 4 or 5 hours a week in your business,
Yes.
how much money would you make if you
Yes.
were selling, right? If you
Yes.
were actually having sales conversations, and that should always be a heck of a lot more than the 5 hours. If not, we need to talk about your business model as well. Um,
Yes.
but it for most people it translates to it's completely worth it. Another place that's not a VA that I always recommend is a housekeeper.
Oh,
Like how
100%. Yes.
how
Yes. 100%.
those four
Yes.
or 5 hours that it takes you
Yes.
to clean,
Yes.
what could you do if you put that into your business? It's like $100, $120
Yep.
that's gonna translate into that could potentially translate into thousands of dollars.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you start to look at it that way, it only but makes sense.
Yes. Housekeepers
But
and meal delivery. I like meal delivery too. I have
mm,
my groceries delivered every week because I don't want to take the hour to go to the market or 45 minutes. So they come once a week. If I have to stop in and just pick up one bag of just, a few extra things, but grocery delivery is another one. Like free up that mind space of the minutia tasks that you do in your household. 100%. Yes.
yeah. Um, so I have a team member and they're not performing or they're not doing this friction in
Yes.
the process. This happens a lot
Yes.
as well. And let's talk about that as well
Yeah.
because I think, it's important that managing people is something you have to learn. It is a skill set. I
Yep.
I feel what happens a lot to my clients is they get caught up in like there's two pitfalls that I see. Number one is they're being nice.
Yes.
Like I just had
Yes.
a coaching call with this person who she's had this employee for a long time. She inherited the business from like her family
Oh,
and she inherited this employee and this employee came with the bad habits of
yes.
how they used to run their business before. And
Yes.
so now she's kind of like stuck with this employee. And I'm like, no, you're not.
Yes.
No, you are not stuck with that employee. That is
Correct.
false. Like,
Yes.
like
Yes.
anytime you have to work harder to work around one of your team members,
Yes.
that's not the right team member for you.
Correct.
And
Correct.
set them free.
Set them free. Set them free. They're going to do better somewhere else. They're going to be happier because they probably feel the friction too. Yes. Oh, the team situation, the team morale is so critical, and that the team members are bringing ideas to the table and that they are on board with the vision. They're on board with the vision and they're on board with the fact that every 90 days things are going to change. And like with everybody that joins my team, there we're very transparent. I'm very transparent about my vision is to impact 1 million business owners, entrepreneurs to be able to scale their life and do it easier and with balance. That's my mission. It's a personal brand, so I tell everybody it's a personal brand. So you're dealing with my identity, and every 90 days we're going to test something new. So how do you see yourself growing within my personal brand? I want to know what their goals are personally, and I want to see their drive. I want to see them say like, "Oh, I would love to take the lead in bringing your brand, social media, or I would love to be on the front lines with some of your client relations. That these conversations are so fascinating." So I want to see where the team member wants to be so that I can help position their role in what lights them up and they feel empowered. And also, I meet with my team every week. We review metrics related to their goal, to relate to their role, some goals related to their role, and also they're responsible for bringing new ideas to solving problems that are going on. So we create a culture of problem solving and constant change in the team
Love
because
that.
most of the friction comes from people who don't want to change. So your longtime family business story, that happens all the time with my clients too. The longtime family business, there's employees there that sometimes don't want to change. And the culture has to be about change and growth. And everybody on board has to be excited about the vision of where you're going.
Yeah. And something to keep in mind, if you're a team of two or a
Yes.
team of three, even a team of four,
Yes.
one person who's not on board,
Yes.
it's so impactful.
Yes.
You're not talking about a big corporate office where
Correct.
somebody on the 25th floor who isn't pulling their weight, isn't
Yes.
clogging up the thing. You're talking about like one of the wheels in the car not working.
Yes.
It's too impactful
Too
to
impactful.
not have it. And the other thing that oh, you said something that I didn't want to skip over. Um, come back to me. Come back to me. It's right there. It wants to come out. This idea that you you want to make sure that you are training them to be problem solvers from the beginning. The worst thing you could do is to train them to be task
Yes.
doers.
Yeah,
Like you
correct.
need the task done,
Yes.
but what's going to be more helpful for you when you're working and launching your business or setting up a team member is are they bringing solutions to the table? Because if you have to make every decision, if you have to tell them what to do at all times. They're gonna do their thing, they're gonna come back, and then they're gonna stare at you. And now
Yes.
you're trying to do your thing, but you're feeling pressure that you've got to stop and now figure out what they're gonna do next. But if
So
they come back to you and they say, okay, I did this, I see you're busy, here's another list of 5 things that I think will make a difference and will bring in some business. Is that okay with you? Great, run with that. Well, now they're actually bringing solutions to the table. That kind of person is invaluable in the game. But it
yes.
also starts how you train them. Like that, I think the conversations in the interview and the context that Kasey set up in the interview is key from the very beginning. But even
Yes.
how you're onboarding them, okay, how would you solve this problem?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
now that you're done that, okay, now here are the 2 things. Which one would you choose and why? And it's
Yes.
okay to course correct,
Yes.
but you want to train them to bring solutions to you because that is another pitfall that I see. People hire task doers and then they come to you and then they're like, and now you're sitting there. That's the other thing that drives me nuts. Like you're sitting there for a couple
Yeah.
of hours because I didn't get back to you in time. It's like,
Yeah.
no. You
Yeah.
know?
Yes,
You-
that's such a good point. Such a good point. And sometimes with the task managers, they'll say, "Okay, it's done," but then you're like, "But we're not getting the results. We're not getting the performance. We're not getting the metrics changing." So bring this to my attention because just
yeah,
we did the task and I'm not thinking about it because it's on your responsibility list, but I'm also expecting that you're going to flag at the meeting, "Hey, this isn't working. I've got some new ideas." Like, pay attention. Don't just check the list and say done, 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 done. I recently changed VAs for this exact reason. I had a younger VA that was just coming out of an internship, and I thought she could come on, and it was the task manager. To your point, exactly. She just check, 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 and I would say, but wait a minute, this isn't on brand. We're not getting the metric results. We can't just do the same thing. Like, what's your solution to this? And she kind of put her hands in the air, and it was exactly to your point. What do you want me to do? Is what she said. Well, what do you want? And I'm like,
mm-hmm,
no, I want you to solve the problem because this is your responsibility, whether it was social posting or whatever it might have been. And so I just made a change to your point. The task managers that's all they're focused on are not the right people. They're not the right people.
yeah,
When you have a small business, when you have a small business and you're starting out and you're a team of 2, 3, or 4, we want people that have some critical thinking skills that can help problem solve. The task managers in a big corporation, when there's like, we need some data entry, okay, sure, that we don't, that's fine. But in a small business and starting as an entrepreneur, no, we need critical thinkers, people that can bring their brains to the table. Every brain counts.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, um, where should we go next? I feel like there's so much ground that we've covered. So, you have a team member. We talked about some tips for hiring, and something that I also want to say this, like, we have so many resources now. You know, I mean, you can even do VAs overseas that are
Yes.
pretty,
Yeah.
reasonable, even as low as like 7, 8, $9 an hour. They require more management and they come with a little bit more of like hand holding, I think, at the beginning, but those are great solutions. But I want to really invite you guys to even build this into your business plan from the very beginning, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
It's like don't even wait for it to be something that you build into. It's like you're gonna, if you're looking to grow fast, you're gonna need help. So as you're figuring out your business expenses and your budget for to run your business, put those numbers in from the very beginning,
Yes.
because it will actually have you move faster if you've implemented that from the beginning, as opposed to finding yourself in a place where you're stuck because now you're trying to figure out how to implement it and you're building the ship while you're flying it and all of that stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. I agree 100%. It's got to be part of the plan right from the beginning. The team building, it's the only way to freedom. If you're starting a business for freedom, the only way to get there is to build a team. So if that is not top of mind every single day, is
Yeah.
how do I start with this part-time person freelance? How do I get this person more hours? How do I hire the next person? If that is not top of mind, you're going to be stuck in the grind making the candles, and you're never going to get out of that if you're not thinking, how am I building this person, and what is my long-term vision in 1 year from now, 2 years, 3 years? What is my org chart? What is my vision? What is my revenue goals, right? Always be thinking about those big macro pictures every day. When you're in the micro day to day, don't stay there. Don't stay in the micro. Always be thinking about the macro vision and what needs to be different next quarter, next month. Start doing that. Start doing that.
Yeah, that's something that so many people. I One of the things that my next question for you was going to be, what are some of the pitfalls or themes or trends that you're seeing out there for entrepreneurs? One of the ones that I'm seeing is just this like working in reaction. It's
Yes.
like you're caught in this like hamster wheel, working in reaction, putting out fires
Yes.
constantly, and you have all these like, you wake up, you grab your phone, and whatever your phone is telling you to go start doing, you just, and then all of a sudden you're just like, and this work that you're talking about of the constant evaluation, the structured evaluation, like the 90 minutes,
Yes.
excuse me, that every 90 days you have a scheduled check-in with yourself. Those types of structures are the things that keep you in on
Yes.
track from working in that reaction.
That's right.
It's like the thing that I always talk about it this way. It's like, when you set sail, you're following, I'm going that way, right? You set the boat and you're going that way, but now the tide and the
Yeah.
wind are constantly pushing on the boat.
Yes.
So you're
Yes.
so literally when you're driving a sailboat, you're constantly adjusting course. That's all you're
Yes.
doing. Up, back here. Up, back here.
Yes.
Up, back here, because the sail and the wind are always shifting course. And it's very much the same way. Life,
Yep.
things will happen.
Yeah.
But those 90-day check-ins, those 90-day goal setting, reevaluation, that's what keeps you back on track. That's what has you go, oh, I need to make an adjustment here. And if you're not doing that, if you're not picking up your head, you're just caught in that hamster wheel.
Scott. And I like data. So the thing that I like to do when we talk about metrics or KPIs, that sounds very intimidating for people. I just say
Mm,
pick five things. But here's the key. Create a spreadsheet by month. So you actually record them by month, because then when you look at 90 days, you can see, let's say you're looking at a marketing tactic. Let's say you're looking at your lead generation, right? So you're tracking how many leads are coming in each month from different activities that you're doing. That might be one thing. Hopefully, that's one thing you're looking at. If you track it by month, don't just look at it once a month. Put it on a spreadsheet for have 12 columns for each month. So when you're looking at the 90-day mark, you can look historically and you can see, oh, look, we're getting more leads per month than we got 90 days ago. Because if you look at your data on a spreadsheet tracked by month and you're looking at the trends over time, you will catch yourself before it's too late to recognize that you're in a position to be in the same place next year than you are today. So, I checking in 90 days, because to your point, people that are stuck in the same rut, they're being reactionary. It's because they're not forcing themselves to put their systems in place, hire that team member, start to forecast. So we're both looking historically and into the future of like, okay, I've generated this many leads every month. What am I going to do the next 90 days that's going to generate more leads? And then you look at your calendar and your team and you figure out how you're going to do it, right? But from the top level, if you're looking at your data each month, tracking on a spreadsheet, you're holding yourself accountable so that 100% you will not be in the same place next year. You will be 10x further because you're recognizing the patterns and the trends. And you don't need to track a million things. Just pick the big ones, like your leads, your conversion rate, your retention rate. Like if you're just tracking those three things, that's really all you need to do. But each month, so that you're seeing your patterns, you're recognizing what to fix and what to tweak. And that right there will blow your business up.
yeah. What you just dropped is such gold. Again, I feel like data is one of those things that people are scared to
Yes.
dive into because they think that, whatever they think, I don't know. I think it's part of those finance things. Well, I don't think we're taught this. Like, I wasn't taught this,
I
and I remember when I first started, my eyes would glaze over. Like, I would go into, I had a business partner in my first coaching practice, and she was a spreadsheet person. So her and my business manager would go into these meetings and they would start crunching numbers and looking and talking, and I would start playing games on my phone because I was a creative guy.
Right.
I'm here for the marketing. I'm here for the ideas. I'm here
Yes.
for the branding. I'm here
Yeah.
for the idea, you know?
Yeah.
And so and then I had to like really have a conversation with myself and go, wait a minute. I need to know like what this is. I
Right.
can't just like ignore it.
Right.
Um, so, but if you look at it, it's like I was an artist, I was a
Right.
creative, I was like
Right.
that was my
Which is
jam. So
important. That's
I
important.
never
Yeah.
learned this stuff,
Yeah.
and but when I started to go, okay, how can I learn this? Like what
Yes.
I can, then I started to ask for what I needed. I'm like, okay, guys, I need these meetings to be 30 minutes. I can't
Yes.
give you more than 30 minutes, or but I need this to
Yes.
be organized this way. I need you to color
Yes.
code this way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
all that started to create
Yes.
the information in a way that I wasn't able to be engaged with it,
Yes.
and then I could learn,
Yes.
so it what you're saying is such gold, to the point that now like I this is what I coach other people to do. I went
Yes.
from being the creative guy who didn't want to talk about numbers to now like working with entrepreneurs and helping them grow their business and loving numbers. But it
Yes.
started out that way because
Yep.
it's so powerful once you start to do that. So what you just dropped is gold, and I love the simplicity of just track three of your metrics.
Fact
Three
three.
of your metrics.
Yep.
Well, and depending on your business, maybe for you
Yeah.
is followers on Instagram,
Right.
maybe for you is visitors to your website, maybe it's for
Right.
you is like whatever works for your business to track, but start tracking those measurements. I was just doing a workshop a few weeks ago, and I'm asking people to start doing this, and it was a retail online business, and the first thing I like, how many people are coming to your website?
Yes. Yeah.
She didn't have the answer to that. I'm like, well, how
Right.
do you, so you don't know how many people are coming to your website, so how
Right.
do you know how you're converting on the
Right.
website? How do you know?
Right.
So like that type of information tells you what to troubleshoot. It's
Yes.
and you could be focusing on the wrong thing. You could be working so hard on a
Yes.
different part of your business, but the thing that's going to make the difference is this part, and if you don't track those numbers, you don't know that.
Exactly. That's your business acumen. You've got to know where your leads are coming from. Just like to your point, if you've got an e-commerce store, you've got to know your website data. You have to know that's your storefront. How many people are walking in the store, and then converting is how many people are buying. So it's like where on the landing page does the sales language need to be changed? Does there need to be a video? Does there need to be something more personal, right? So it's how many people are coming into your ecosystem, whether it's online, offline, wherever it is. How many people are buying, and you're looking at the steps that lead to the buying, and then how many people stay on? Do they buy again? Do they love what you're doing, your service, your product, what you're doing? You're over delivering so much they want to keep coming back for more. Those are the three in any business model. Like you can reverse engineer how they're getting there, whether it's website or they're coming into DMs. Like you can figure out for your business where they're coming in, but tracking those wherever the leads are coming in for you, where they're converting at that stage, and looking at that and how many conversions are happening, and how many people from the conversions stay on to work with you in the future. That's how you build a scalable business model. And so most people aren't looking at the numbers, but you've got to look at least those three for your business. You have to.
Yeah. Amen. Well, I could talk shop with you forever.
Yes. And
It was so much fun. Thank you so much for stopping by. There was so much gold on this call, guys. So I really hope that you go implement some of these things, because there were a lot of really great nuggets. But Kasey, how can people find you? We'll put the links in the show notes and all that. But if for those that are listening, how can people get in touch with you?
yes, you could definitely get in touch with me. LinkedIn at Kasey D'Amato, or Instagram. I have a presence on Facebook too, but I'm most active on LinkedIn, Instagram. I answer my DMs, so feel free to pop in there. My team will flag me, and I will answer any questions you might have. I've got a free tool I'm happy to share with your community. That's a business growth cheat sheet. I'm happy to share, or you can ping me and I'll send it over to you. But I support entrepreneurs, growth-minded entrepreneurs. That's what I'm all about, holistic leadership. You can do it one foot at a time, and remember, those failures are privileges.
Hey, hey, hey. All right. Thanks, Kasey, for being here. We'll have you back on the show soon, okay?
All right, take care. Thanks, Gary.
Big hug. Bye. Leadership is something that often gets overlooked in a small business. I think for most entrepreneurs, it seems frivolous to focus on leadership when you're just trying to keep the wheels and the bus on. There are so many more urgent and in many cases more tangible things to do. So many, many, many things to do. Leadership also conjures up images of leading others, and most small business owners out there are a one-person show. So the whole thing just starts to add up to not seeing the need to create yourself as a leader just yet. But this can be a costly mistake. Leadership starts with personal leadership, and that's how you lead yourself as well as your business. When you're a one-person show, it's even more important that you start from this place. Leadership is what creates the context for building a vision for your business. Leadership is how you create the context for business planning and business strategy. And leadership is what creates the context for facing challenges and finding the opportunities in them. Let's use the flying the plane analogy. Kasey and I are asking you to build the leadership feature into your new plane from the beginning. If you don't build the feature in from the beginning, well, then you're gonna have to build the feature in while you're flying the plane. Or worse, you'll have to ground the plane altogether in order to build a new one. Both of these options require you to slow down production, costing you time, money, and maybe even missed opportunities. Now, this doesn't mean you start building a 747 from the beginning. Your leadership practices can be small. Start with some quarterly and monthly goals. The 3 key metrics that you're going to measure your business growth by. And work on maintaining a growth mindset. That alone will set you up leaps and bounds. Those practices are easily scalable if you already have the practice and systems in place. As the old saying goes, if you stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready. As always, thank you for joining me this week. If you've enjoyed the episode, please share it with 2 or 3 people in your life that you think will also enjoy it. It makes a huge difference in supporting the podcast and my mission of empowering others in their ownership of life. I will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Ownership Game with your host, Gary Montalvo. Make sure to like and comment on your favorite podcast platform, as well as subscribe so that you never miss an episode.